Disciplinary process, of course, NRS Chapter 289 for the Peace Officers Bill of Rights. Again, you should review that. It's a very short section as far as the actual rights go. They start at 289.010 through 289.120 that you should be very familiar with. I mean, it's something, I even carry a copy with me with the highlighting and things like that come up all the time, just so that I can pull it out if there's a situation that I haven't dealt with in a while, or even show it to the investigator if he or she's not familiar with the process, which you'll find at times that there are rights that peace officers have in Nevada that other employees don't have. So they should know that, but the way they go through the IG's office as far as investigators go and lack of training and things like that, it's not uncommon for you to have an issue come up with 289 that it's one of those things. You can either bring it up ahead of time and let them correct it, or you don't say anything about it and then use it against them at the end, because there is a provision that if they violate 289, if the state violates 289 in the course of the investigation, any information that they obtain through that investigation can't be used in a disciplinary action after the fact. And a hearing officer can actually, if it's a severe disciplinary action that is appealed to the hearing officer, and we'll talk about that process here in a minute, the hearing officer can actually exclude that information at the hearing, and it may result in the disciplinary action even being thrown out as far as a suspension, demotion, or dismissal goes. That's 289.085 as far as the inadmissibility of that evidence obtained in violation of 289. I guess some of the highlights of 289, of course, the 48 hours notice for an interview. That's 289.060, which you can waive if if something comes up that's serious enough that they want to get you in right away or get a member in right away. I don't encourage you to do that often. Usually it's one of those things that you can certainly wait 48 hours, but there are certain situations that have to be investigated right away, and that's a call that you need to make, or most likely I need to make, if it's something that serious as far as the member's representation goes. The notice has to contain, nature of the investigation, summary of alleged misconduct, date, time, and place of the interrogation, name and rank of the officer in charge, name of any other person who will be present, make a reference to 289, and those are things that they usually have a pretty good form that they use, but not always, that includes all that information. It'd be a technical violation, I think, if some of those things aren't in the notice that we may or may not be able to use down the road, but just keep that in mind, that all those things should be in the notice when it's given to the member. Of course, the interrogation has to be during regular working hours or be paid overtime if they're going to bring a member in outside of those working hours. And anymore, it seems like they're trying to cut down on overtime, supposedly. So it's during the working hours, which results in interviews being conducted at 6 in the morning sometimes, or 9 o'clock at night, whatever it happens to be. But that's kind of the nature of the beast with your shifts and duties. The investigation itself, of course, garrity applies as far as the information that is given at a investigation. And of course, garrity is the Supreme Court case that provides that information can't be used against a member criminally. So you're required to answer the questions. They can use that against you for disciplinary action, but they can't take any kind of criminal action based on what is said at a IG's interview, administrative interrogation. Of course, 289.080 your members are entitled to 2 representatives of his or her choosing. So if that means having me there plus one of the local reps from the institution, that's the member's call. If they want to do that, then the IG's office has to allow it. And it's of their choosing. So if they want me to be there, if they want one of you to be there, and you're not available, I'm not available at the time, then technically that interview has to be rescheduled at a time that the member's representatives can't make it. And I know that's one of those things that push comes to shove sometimes. They'll say, nope, we're not going to reschedule it. Well, they're proceeding at their peril then at that point. That can result in all that information not being able to be used for disciplinary action. And certainly you can remind them of that if they're going to be difficult about it, but overall they're pretty good. The IG investigators are about, if they know that I'm going to be involved, they'll give me a heads up to try to get it on my calendar first, but not always, and then reschedule it if need be to either allow me to travel to the institution or even be available by phone to represent a member. And also under 289.080, a representative of a peace officer must assist the peace officer during the interrogation or hearing. So that means that you don't just have to sit there and listen to what the investigator is asking the member. You can be interactive. You have to be. If it's something that's outside the scope of the notice that was given, again, it's one of those things that you can bring it to their attention and say, that's enough. You notified the employee of this allegation, now you're going over there. Or depending if you know about what they're going to, and that's the thing that you need to talk to your member about ahead of time. If there's something else that's related to the allegation that they may be wanting to know about, then you need to know that ahead of time. So if it's headed that direction and it's something that's not favorable to your member, then say, that's enough. That's outside of the notice. They may re-notice. They may stop the interview, re-notice for 2 days later, and bring them back in. But then at least you have time to talk to your member, and you can always take a time out too at an interview if a member needs to talk to you. Ask the investigator, can we have a couple minutes? Usually they're good about that. Again, you don't necessarily need to be in control of the interview, but you definitely need to be active. And again, having a copy of 289 with you to pull out and show to the investigator, that's something that I encourage you to do. It should be with your rep manual, and I think it is actually one of the tabs. I apologize. Appendix C. That's actually the NACs for all state employees. Of course, NRS are the statutes, and Nevada Administrative Code, NAC, are the regulations that apply those statutes on a everyday type situation. So both NRS and NAC are things that you have to be familiar with. Going back to the rep manual, I'm sorry, it's Appendix E is Peace Officer Bill of Rights, and you'll see at the beginning of that there were some changes to the Peace Officer Bill of Rights in 2005, which actually allowed for the information to be withheld or excluded from a disciplinary action. That was one of the changes that was made that session. So there's a little summary at the beginning as far as those changes, and then the actual current copy of 289 with those changes in it appears after that on tab E. One thing you can keep in mind for the non-sworn employees, they're entitled to a representative as well. That's 284.387 of NRS. They also are entitled to written notice and 2 days to obtain representation. Technically, it's one representative instead of two like a peace officer, but they still are entitled to representation in a administrative investigation.